Jake had always led a quiet life. He wasn't the kind of person who sought attention or adventure. A janitor at Greenwood High School, he spent his days cleaning hallways, scrubbing floors, and fixing broken light bulbs. His nights were filled with caring for his young daughter, Emily. As a single father, life wasn't easy, but Jake did his best. Emily had special needs, and Jake knew he was all she had. He loved her deeply and made sure she had everything she needed, even if it meant sacrificing his own free time. One evening, after finishing a long shift, Jake stayed behind to finish some extra cleaning in a storage room that was rarely used. It was a dusty place filled with old boxes and forgotten furniture. There was an odd, dim light coming from a corner of the room, and Jake, always curious, made his way toward it. As he stepped closer, he noticed an object that seemed out of place. It was a strange, metallic artifact lying on top of a pile of old books. It looked like nothing Jake had ever seen before. It was about the size of a basketball, and it shimmered in the low light, casting a soft glow. He reached out, his fingers brushing the cool surface of the object. The moment he touched it, there was a sudden sharp buzzing sound, and the room around him seemed to spin. Before he could pull his hand away, the ground beneath him vanished. He felt himself falling, but there was no pain, only a strange weightlessness. The buzzing noise grew louder, and then everything went silent. Jake's body tensed, and he felt a strange pressure in his chest. When he opened his eyes, the room was gone. In its place was an enormous metallic structure that stretched far, beyond what he could see. Jake found himself standing in the middle of a wide circular room, with walls made of gleaming, polished metal. He could hear strange voices coming from all around him, but they didn't sound like anything he had ever heard. The words were guttural and harsh, and Jake immediately felt out of place. His heart began to race. A group of beings stood nearby, watching him. They were tall and looked nothing like humans. Their skin was a dark shade of blue, and they had large, bulbous eyes that seemed to shimmer with an unnatural glow. Their faces were covered in intricate patterns, and their limbs were long and thin. Jake instinctively took a step back, unsure of what was happening. "What is this? Where am I?" Jake muttered under his breath, his mind struggling to make sense of what was going on. One of the aliens, a tall figure with a commanding presence, stepped forward. His voice was deep and intimidating, but it carried an unmistakable tone of curiosity. "Human, how did you get here?" Jake didn't understand the words at first, but somehow he felt as if he could grasp their meaning. The more the alien spoke, the more Jake could sense the intentions behind the words. His mind, though still in shock, began to piece together the strange language. It was as if the sounds, once foreign and alien, were starting to make sense. Jake looked at the alien, his mouth going dry. His mind raced, trying to figure out what to do next, but to his surprise, the words began to spill out of his mouth. Without thinking, he replied in the same strange language that the alien had used. "I don't know. What is this place?" The alien's eyes widened in shock. He looked at his companions, and they exchanged confused glances. It was clear that they hadn't expected the human to respond in their language. "Impossible. How? Do you speak our tongue?" the alien commander asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Jake, still dazed and unsure of what was happening, could only shake his head. He had no idea why or how he was speaking their language, but something in him told him it was right. The words just came naturally, like he had known them his whole life. He had never studied an alien language, nor had he ever even imagined meeting extraterrestrial life. Yet here he was, in a place beyond his understanding, communicating with beings who were clearly not from Earth. The alien commander took a step back, his hand resting on what looked like a communicator. "Zarath, report." He spoke into the device in the same strange language, and soon, another alien appeared from a different corridor. This one was smaller, with a body that looked like a mix of insect and humanoid features. It scurried over to the group and stood in front of Jake, eyeing him with what seemed like intense scrutiny. "What is the human doing here?" the new alien asked in a voice that was slightly higher pitched but still understandable. It was as if their language, once strange and foreign, was becoming clearer to Jake with each passing moment. "He speaks our tongue," Zarath replied, still eyeing Jake suspiciously. And he understands us. This is unheard of. Jake swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. His mind was still struggling to process what had just happened. One moment he was cleaning a dusty storage room, and now he was standing aboard what seemed to be an alien spacecraft, surrounded by creatures he couldn't begin to comprehend. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Jake asked, trying to make sense of everything. He didn't know what else to say, but it felt like the right thing to do. The aliens exchanged looks again, and one of them, the smaller, insect-like creature, stepped forward, its many eyes narrowing in curiosity. "How do you know our language?" Jake hesitated. "I don't know. I've never been here before. I don't even know where here is." For a long moment, there was silence. The aliens continued to study him, clearly perplexed. Finally, Zareth spoke again. "We will keep you here for now. There is much to learn. We must find out how and why you can speak our language." Jake felt a sense of unease settle over him, but he also knew he had no choice but to cooperate. He didn't understand what was going on, but one thing was clear. His life was never going to be the same again. Jake stood in the cold metallic room surrounded by strange beings. His mind was still reeling from the shock of what had just happened. He had gone from a quiet janitor in a school storage room to a captive on an alien ship, with no idea how or why he was there. But there was something even more surprising. He could understand the aliens, completely. Zarath, the tall alien commander, watched Jake closely, still unable to comprehend how a human could speak their language. The language itself was harsh, with guttural sounds that would have been difficult for any human to replicate. Yet Jake had done so with ease. Jake felt the weight of their gaze on him, and it made him uncomfortable. His mind raced, trying to find an explanation, but there was none. He had never studied alien languages. He hadn't even known extraterrestrial life existed, but here he was communicating fluently with beings from another world. "I don't understand," Zareth said, his voice low, filled with disbelief. "How is it possible for you to speak our language? No human has ever done this before." Jake shook his head, trying to explain. "I don't know. I was just in a room and then this happened." He looked around the alien ship. "I don't know how I got here either." The smaller, insect-like alien, who had been observing Jake with intense curiosity, clicked its mandibles in confusion. "You came from the artifact?" it asked, its voice sharp and slightly high-pitched. Jake's eyes widened. "Artifact? What artifact?" Zarath exchanged a look with the smaller alien. "The artifact that you touched. It is an ancient relic. It has the power to connect the chosen ones to the languages of the universe. Only those with a special bond can speak the languages of other species." Jake was lost. Chosen ones? "I'm just a janitor. I don't know anything about artifacts or being chosen." The alien commander's eyes narrowed. "You are not an ordinary human. There is something special about you." He turned to the others. "Keep him under watch. I will report this to the council. We must understand the meaning of this. If this human speaks our language, there is more to this than we realize." Jake's heart pounded in his chest as Zareth and the others began discussing him in hushed tones. He was being treated as something more than just a lost human. They seemed to believe that he had some importance, though he had no idea why. The words "chosen ones" echoed in his mind, but they meant nothing to him. He was just a regular guy, a janitor trying to make a living and take care of his daughter. He didn't ask for any of this. "You can understand us," Zarath said, turning back to Jake. "Tell us, what is your name?" "Jake," he replied simply. "Jake Matthews." Zarath stared at him, clearly intrigued. Jake Matthews. A simple name for such an unexpected occurrence. Jake rubbed his temples, trying to make sense of what was happening. He had always been a quiet person, someone who preferred to stay under the radar. But now, in the middle of an alien spacecraft, he was the center of attention. His thoughts were interrupted when Zarath spoke again. "There is much to learn from you, Jake Matthews. You will be our guide." You will help us decode the ancient texts that are hidden in our records. Jake blinked in confusion. Decoding? I don't even know how to read those texts. I'm just a janitor. I don't know anything about ancient languages or alien records. Zareth smiled, though it wasn't a reassuring smile. Your ability to understand our language is no accident. The artifact chose you because you have the potential to unlock the knowledge of the universe. You are the key. Jake felt a wave of panic rise in his chest. I don't want to be some key. I just want to go home. I have a daughter. I need to get back to her. The alien commander's expression softened for a moment, though the seriousness remained. We understand your desire to return home, Jake Matthews. But there is much at stake here. The artifact has brought you to us, and now we must discover why. Once we understand the full extent of your abilities, we will help you return to your world. Jake didn't know whether to believe Zareth. The thought of being stuck on this alien ship forever terrified him. He thought of Emily, his little girl, and the promise he had made to always protect her. He couldn't let her grow up without him, but he also couldn't ignore the fact that he had somehow become part of something much larger than himself. I don't understand what you want from me, Jake said, his voice shaking. I'm just a guy. I don't know anything about this galaxy-wide stuff. Zareth looked at Jake with something close to pity. You have a gift, Jake, and you will learn to use it. You will help us, and we will help you. Jake was taken to a different part of the ship, away from the main group of aliens. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen, filled with strange technology and glowing lights. It was vast, with corridors that seemed to stretch on forever, and rooms that seemed to hold all kinds of alien artifacts and relics. It was both beautiful and terrifying. The alien soldiers who escorted Jake led him to a room where he was seated in front of a large holographic display. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the ship's machinery. A series of alien symbols flashed on the display, moving quickly across the screen. This is what you will help us with. Zareth's voice echoed in the room. We have records from the ancients, the ones who created the artifact. You will help us decipher them. Jake felt his hands sweat as the symbols danced on the screen. He couldn't understand them. Not yet. But something inside him told him he could. It was as though a part of his mind was starting to wake up, pushing him to understand the symbols and decode their meaning. Zareth and the others watched intently as Jake focused on the symbols. He felt his heart beat faster, and then, almost without thinking, he began to speak. The words came naturally, flowing from him as if they had always been inside his head. The key to peace lies in the forgotten words. Only the one who understands. The languages will unlock the path. Zareth's eyes widened in surprise. You've done it. You've begun to decode the ancient texts. This is just the beginning, Jake Matthews. Jake stared at the symbols on the screen, unsure of what he had just done. But one thing was clear. He was no longer just a janitor. He was part of something far bigger than he could have imagined. Jake was starting to feel the weight of his new reality. Each passing moment on the alien ship seemed to stretch time further, like he was in some strange dream he couldn't wake up from. He had gone from a simple janitor to a person who could speak alien languages fluently, and now it seemed he was the key to unlocking some ancient, mysterious power. The alien commander, Zareth, was still fascinated by him, and the more Jake learned, the more he realized how little he truly knew about what was going on. After that moment when Jake had successfully deciphered part of the alien texts, Zareth had been ecstatic. The alien crew had started treating him with a mix of respect and awe. He was no longer just an outsider. He was now an essential part of their mission. But there was still so much Jake didn't understand, and he had questions he needed answered. Zareth, what is the artifact? Jake asked one evening as they walked through the ship's gleaming halls. The ship's technology seemed to hum with energy, the walls glowing softly as they moved. Why did it choose me? I'm just a regular guy. I don't even know what I'm doing here. Zareth, who had been walking beside him, turned his head slowly, his many eyes glimmering with something Jake could almost describe as understanding. The artifact is more than just a relic. It is a bridge. He paused as though carefully choosing his words. It connects different species. different galaxies. It was created long ago by an ancient civilization. They believed that only those with the gift of language could unlock the true potential of the universe. The artifact was their creation. Jake's mind raced as he listened. So the artifact chose me because I can speak their languages? Not only because of that. Zarath stopped walking and turned to face Jake fully. The artifact connects to your mind, to your very soul. It only works with someone who has the potential to use its power. You, Jake Matthews, are the chosen one. Jake's eyes widened. He had heard the words chosen one before, but they never felt real. He was just a man trying to survive and care for his daughter. Now he was hearing that he had a special role in something far bigger than himself. He couldn't believe it. So I'm like, a key? Jake asked, trying to make sense of it all. I can help you unlock something important? Zarath nodded. Yes, exactly. The language you speak holds the key to something greater. But it's not just about translation. It's about understanding the deeper meaning behind these languages, the history that has been lost over time. Jake was quiet for a moment, digesting Zarath's words. But why me? I'm no expert in languages. I'm just a janitor. I've never even traveled outside of Earth. Zarath's eyes softened. The artifact didn't choose you for your experience, Jake. It chose you for your heart. You are a man of understanding, a man who can bridge gaps and communicate even when the words are difficult to find. This is why the artifact has connected with you. Jake didn't know what to say. He had always thought of himself as ordinary. He never expected his life to take such a strange turn, let alone become a bridge between two worlds. But even as he struggled to accept his new reality, he couldn't deny the strange feeling deep inside him, something that told him Zarath was right. The artifact had chosen him for a reason. The conversation was interrupted by a loud chime, signaling that they had arrived at a large open chamber inside the ship. It looked like a command center, with holographic screens floating in midair and alien technology glowing softly along the walls. Several aliens were gathered around a large table, looking at displays and communicating in low voices. Zarath gestured for Jake to follow him. Come, Jake. There is something we must show you. Jake followed him into the center of the room, where a large holographic map was projected in the air. The map showed several distant planets, each marked with glowing symbols. Some of the symbols were familiar to Jake, but others were completely foreign. What is this? Jake asked, his voice filled with curiosity. These are the coordinates of an ancient world. Zarath's tone grew more serious. It is a world that the ancient civilization believed held the answers to the universe's greatest mysteries. The artifact in its full power will lead us to this world, but the path is dangerous. Only the one who can decipher the ancient languages can unlock the final step. Jake stepped closer to the map, studying the distant stars. He had never seen anything like this before. The sheer scale of what he was involved in made his head spin. So, the artifact leads to a planet that holds all these secrets? Zarath nodded. Yes, but it is not an easy journey. There are many who want the power of the artifact for themselves. Warlords, thieves, and conquerors who would use it to dominate the galaxy. That is why you are so important, Jake Matthews. You have the knowledge and the ability to protect the artifact and unlock its full power. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The responsibility was heavier than anything he had ever carried. He wasn't just some random person in the wrong place at the wrong time. He was now a protector of something far greater than himself. What will happen if I can't unlock the power? Jake asked, his voice quiet, but filled with a deep concern. Then the artifact will fall into the wrong hands and the galaxy will descend into chaos. Zarath's voice was low and serious. It is a power that can either create or destroy. You must succeed. Jake swallowed hard. The pressure was overwhelming, but he couldn't turn back now. He had a daughter to protect, and somehow this was all connected. Whether he understood it or not, he had been chosen to carry out this mission. It was up to him to decode the final pieces of the puzzle and ensure the artifact's power was used for good. As they stood in front of the map, Zarath placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. You will not be alone in this journey, Jake Matthews. We will help you. But you must prepare yourself. The path ahead will not be easy. Jake nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. He didn't know how he would succeed, but he knew one thing for certain. He had to try. For Emily, for his daughter. He couldn't fail. Jake had spent days aboard the alien ship, trying to adjust to his new life. He wasn't sure how he had gone from being a janitor in a small town to a key figure in an intergalactic mission. But here he was, living a reality he never could have imagined. Each day he grew more familiar with the strange crew and their ways, even if everything about this alien life still felt unreal. He didn't feel like a hero or a chosen one. He just felt like a man trying to find his way home, to his daughter. The more Jake helped the aliens with their mission, the more they came to rely on him. Zarath, the alien commander, seemed to have endless faith in Jake's ability to understand their languages, and that faith was becoming a double-edged sword. With every day that passed, Jake felt more and more pressure to live up to their expectations. 1. Afternoon, Zarath approached Jake with a new set of symbols projected in the air. We have gathered more ancient records. They need to be deciphered. Jake sighed but nodded. His mind had been racing ever since he first decoded a small section of the alien texts. The symbols seemed to swirl in his mind just beyond his grasp, as if waiting for him to figure them out. He had never studied anything like this before, and yet when he focused, the symbols began to form into words and phrases. It was strange, almost as if they were speaking to him, pulling the knowledge from deep within him. What do you see? Zarath asked, his voice full of anticipation. Jake stared at the symbols, trying to force the meaning to come to him. At first, it was like looking at a puzzle without the pieces fitting together. But then, like a light turning on in his mind, he felt a sudden clarity. He took a deep breath and spoke the words that came to him, his voice steady and clear despite the complexity of the language. The artifact's true power lies not in the words, but in the silence between them. Only the one who listens can hear the path forward. Zarath's eyes widened, and the alien crew members who had been standing nearby all turned to look at Jake. He had done it again. He had decoded a section of the ancient texts in a way that no one expected. Incredible. Jake. Zarath's voice was filled with awe. You understand it now, don't you? You are more than just a translator. You are the key to unlocking the hidden knowledge within these records. Jake felt a strange mix of pride and anxiety. He had unlocked something important, but what did it all mean? What was he supposed to do with this power? And more importantly, how could he use it to get back to Emily? It's just words, right? Jake said, though even he wasn't sure what he meant. I just hear them in my head, and they make sense. But what's next? What's the next step? Zarath stepped closer, placing a hand on Jake's shoulder. The next step, Jake Matthews, is to trust yourself. Trust that the language will guide you. The artifact chose you because you have the ability to listen to the silence, to understand what others cannot. The journey ahead is not just about words, but about understanding the truth behind them. Jake nodded, still feeling the weight of what was ahead of him. But there was a part of him, deep down, that knew Zarath was right. He had to trust himself. Somehow the artifact had brought him here for a reason, and the strange ability to understand alien languages was only the beginning. There was something much bigger waiting for him, something that he still couldn't fully comprehend. Over the next few days, Jake continued to study the ancient records with Zarath and the rest of the crew. Every time they uncovered more information, Jake felt the mystery grow deeper. There were maps of star systems he didn't recognize, lists of species that didn't exist on Earth, and references to ancient powers that no one seemed to understand. But the more Jake worked with the alien texts, the clearer it became that there was a common thread linking everything together. One evening, as Jake sat alone in his small quarters aboard the ship, he stared at the holographic map that hovered before him. He had begun to notice patterns in the ancient texts, patterns that suggested the artifact wasn't just some random object. It was part of something much larger, something that had been set into motion long ago. Jake leaned forward, tracing the lines on the map with his fingers. The stars seemed to form a picture, a path that led to a specific point in the galaxy. His eyes widened as he realized what he was looking at. The ancient civilization knew about Earth. Jake whispered to himself. The realization hit him like a wave. The patterns in the records weren't just random. They were guiding him, showing him a connection between Earth and the ancient civilization. Somehow the artifact was tied to his planet, and that meant Jake had a part to play in something far larger than he could have imagined. As the days passed, Jake grew more confident in his ability to decipher the alien texts. The language became less of a puzzle and more like a second nature to him. He no longer had to strain to understand the symbols. They just made sense. It was as though the knowledge had always been inside him, waiting to be unlocked. But with this newfound power came new challenges. Zarath and the other aliens were relying on him more and more, and the pressure to succeed grew heavier with every passing day. Jake felt a deep sense of responsibility. He wasn't just learning for himself anymore. He was learning for the entire galaxy. One morning, after another long study session with Zarath, Jake was summoned to the command center again. When he arrived, Zarath was waiting for him, along with several other alien leaders. They had gathered around a large holographic display showing a new set of coordinates. Jake, this is it, Zarath said. We believe we have found the location of the ancient world, the one we have been searching for. The artifact has guided us here. Now, we need your help to unlock the final step. Jake stood in front of the map, feeling a deep sense of awe. The coordinates pointed to a distant star system, one that he had never heard of before. But it wasn't just the location that caught his attention. It was the symbols that surrounded it. They looked familiar, almost like a key waiting to be turned. What do I need to do? Jake asked, his voice steady. Zarath looked at him with a serious expression. You are the one who can unlock the final piece of the puzzle. The key is in your hands, Jake Matthews. It's time to find the truth. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. He wasn't just a janitor anymore. He wasn't just a father looking for a way back home. He was part of something much bigger. And now the next step was in his hands. Jake had never felt more lost. The alien ship, once a place of mystery and wonder, now felt like a cage. The more he learned, the more pressure he felt. He was no longer just a janitor trying to make ends meet. He was the key to unlocking the galaxy's deepest secrets. Zarath and the others had placed their trust in him, and every time Jake decoded another piece of the ancient text, the responsibility grew heavier. But despite his growing abilities, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong here. As the days passed, the tension aboard the ship seemed to rise. The mission to find the ancient world was nearing its final stage, and everyone was on edge. Zarath had given Jake more responsibility than ever before, and with each success, it felt like the stakes were getting higher. They were getting closer to the answers they had all been searching for, but Jake couldn't ignore the nagging thought in the back of his mind. What if I'm not ready for this? What if I fail? One evening, after another long study session in the command center, Jake was summoned to Zarath's quarters. There was an unusual heaviness in the air, and the crew members who usually greeted him with respect now seemed distant, almost wary. Jake had learned to trust his instincts, and something about the silence made him uneasy. As he walked down the long metallic corridors, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. When he entered Zarath's quarters, he was greeted not by the familiar faces of his alien allies, but by a tense, nervous atmosphere. Zarath stood near a holographic map, his expression unreadable. Jake, come in, we need to talk. Zarath's voice was calm, but there was a certain sharpness to it that made Jake's stomach tighten. What's going on? Jake asked, feeling the weight of the question as soon as it left his lips. Zarath motioned for Jake to sit. We've discovered something troubling. One of our own has betrayed us. Jake's eyes widened. Betrayed? Who? Zarath's gaze darkened. Varnak. He's been working against us. We didn't realize it until now, but he's been sabotaging our mission from the beginning. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Varnak was one of the higher-ranking officers aboard the ship, a tall, imposing figure who always seemed to be involved in the most important decisions. The idea that he had been working against them was almost impossible to believe. "What has he been doing?" Jake asked, his voice shaky. Zareth took a deep breath. "He's been leaking information to the enemies. He's trying to use the artifact's power for himself. We believe he wants to control the galaxy with its knowledge." Jake was stunned. The artifact, the very thing that had brought him here, was now the target of betrayal. "But why would he do that? He's one of us." "He was never truly one of us, Jake. He has his own agenda." Zarath's voice was filled with regret. "We should have seen it earlier, but we trusted him. Now he's on the run. He's taken a ship and he's planning to make a move against us." Jake felt his heart race. This was the moment he had been dreading, the moment when everything started to unravel. He had come to this ship as a simple man, but now he was caught in the middle of a galactic war, and the stakes were higher than ever. "What do we do now?" Jake asked, his voice barely a whisper. Zarath turned to him, his eyes sharp and full of determination. "We stop him. You have the power to help us find him. We need to act quickly. If Varnak gets his hands on the artifact, it could be the end of everything we've worked for." Jake nodded, his mind racing. He didn't know if he was ready for this. He had never been in a battle, never faced a real enemy. But the weight of responsibility was undeniable. He couldn't let the artifact fall into the wrong hands. Not now. Not when he had come so far. "We'll need to track his ship. I'll work with you," Jake said, his voice steady. Zarath placed a hand on his shoulder, a rare gesture of trust. "I knew I could count on you." Jake and Zarath worked quickly, gathering a small group of loyal soldiers. The plan was simple. Locate Varnak's ship and stop him before he could use the artifact's power. The crew moved with precision, and soon they were ready to leave the safety of the ship and pursue their traitorous ally. As they entered the hangar bay, Jake felt a wave of uncertainty wash over him. He wasn't a soldier. He had never fought in a war, but now he was about to be thrust into one. He had to protect the artifact, protect everything that it represented. And he had to do it for Emily. The thought of her kept him focused, kept him grounded. He couldn't fail. He wouldn't. The crew boarded a smaller ship and the engines hummed to life. They shot out into space, the stars stretching out before them like a vast ocean. Jake couldn't help but feel small in the face of such a vast and unknown universe. But at the same time, there was something powerful about being part of this mission. He wasn't just a bystander anymore. He was part of the crew, part of something much bigger than himself. As they approached Varnak's ship, Jake felt his pulse quicken. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for sure. This was his fight now. He had to protect the artifact, protect the galaxy, and most importantly, protect the future of humanity. The crew moved quickly, preparing for the confrontation that was coming. The tension was palpable as they prepared to face the traitor. Jake's hands shook, but he kept his focus. There was no turning back now. "We're almost there, Jake," Zarath said, his voice calm despite the tension. "Stay sharp. This won't be easy." Jake nodded, his mind clear for the first time in days. He wasn't a janitor anymore. He was something more, and he would stop Varnak no matter the cost.